This conference will now be recorded.
Ask everyone to please stand for prayer and then Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we pause to give you thanks for your blessings to us. Lord, we pause to ask that you continue to comfort Miss Charlotte Wynn and Brian and their family members during these difficult days of being without Wayne. Comfort them as only you can. We pray that you give us wisdom as we do the business of the airport. Lord, in all that we do, may it bring glory to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Hitt, roll call.
Chair Kirkland.
Here.
Vice Chair Fryer.
Here.
Major McDowell.
Here, ma'am.
Mr. Cornegay.
Here.
Mr. Richard.
Here.
Mr. Harvin.
Here.
Ms. Rakowski. Here. Mr. Prang.
Here.
Ms. Whitney.
Here.
All right. Chairman?
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hitt. And also let the record show we have Colonel Zinko with us this evening, and Doug Wilcox, as well as Todd Falconer and Bill Prang, and Ms. Lynn Ratowski. So with that, we will get started on the agenda. Ms. Hitt, do we have any public comments?
There were none received.
All right. Item 2 on our agenda is the consent agenda. Mrs. Hitt had sent out to us the minutes as well as the financials for March 2021, and then minutes for April 6, 2021 as well. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Same sign, opposed, same sign. All right, hearing none, it's approved. Let me back up just one step here, and I want to welcome Mr. Bruce Harvin to our board, recently appointed by the city. And Mr. Harvin, good to have you. Thank you for doing that. All right. Item 3 is MHD Rockland, and Todd Falconer has some information for us tonight as far as development proposals. So with that, Mr. Falconer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, Morgan. Next, please. All right, so I wanted to go over a little bit of where we're at with the training year. We currently have 3 students from the German Navy that are graduating on, well, they finished their flying graduation on Friday. They'll graduate officially from the class the 18th. We have 4 students from the German Navy that are in Pensacola and quarantine right now. They're expected to arrive next week. Class 3 is already on the books. We have 2 Royal Hellenic Air Force or Greek pilots coming in. At the same time, or 2 weeks later, we have 2 more German Navy students. We aren't sure what the mix is going to be, but they are going to be different classes. And then before the end of the year, we're going to have the 5th class start with the 2 more German students. We are supposed to, in class 3 or 4, add 2 Spanish pilots and a Portuguese pilot. So it's going to be a pretty good mix. Thanks, Morgan. So I just kind of wanted to go about some of the other things we're doing right now. The picture on the left is when we went down to Mena, Arkansas to pick up the 665 from Paint. And we recently acquired a license from Collins Aerospace to manufacture a lot of their CRJ parts in Ontario, Canada. And we took over their facility in Ontario. And many of you have noticed the big white tent out on the ramp. And that's going to be moved next week over the tail end of the aircraft and secured. That went up pretty fast and was actually kind of impressive to watch. Next, please. So I want to talk a little bit about just first quarter impacts that we've had to the airport in the local area. This was our slowest quarter of the year. We have put in $54,295 in building leases to the airports, which is about $217,000 annually. So far this year, we purchased about $153,000 in fuel. We project that that's going to go a little over $460,000 in fuel at the current rate. If we get the extra pilots, it'll go up, but that's about what we're projecting for the year. So we're looking at right around $1 million in payments to the airport this year. We've been making some substantial lease and capital investments that are currently being worked on that we'll talk about this evening. One of them is the warehouse improvement that we're looking at, and my estimated cost for that's going to be about $4.5 million to put that in. We have 2 industry partners that are looking at this area as a relocation site. One of them is in North Clay County, and the other one's in California. Next, please. So the upcoming project, just today, we got the initial building design back from Sprung. It's 110 feet wide and 600 feet long. So it's 66,000 square feet of warehouse space. It's big. Morgan, can you click on the blueprint picture, please? And then hit the arrow to the right. So it kind of faded out, but you can see the isometric. These are man doors all along the side there. And this is kind of a cutaway of how the insulation within the building is designed. And this is the actual shape of the beam of it. Next, please. So when Mr. Prang's going to talk about this in a minute, this is, we're very happy with this outcome on the situation of the building and where we think we can put it. Obviously, the campus is still on. We're still waiting, of course, for the EA completion and a FONSI letter before we can proceed with that. Funding for some of the infrastructure items is still a bit of a question. And we have a couple business drivers that need to be in place, so hopefully we'll be by then. And this is all going to be run under Space Florida. So it will all be a Space Florida project for the airport. Next, please.
Can I ask you a question about Space Florida without divulging too much information? Is that a UAV project?
No, sir.
Has nothing to do with UAVs?
No, sir.
Can I do mine?
Yes.
Morgan, can you back up one, please? This will save us some time. So you remember at the last board meeting, I showed you 2 sites. We called them 3 and 4. Site 4 was to the west, site 3 was a little to the east. And I just want to give the board an update. Site 4 appears to be the most advantageous site because the natural terrain over here where the trucks have to move is a little flatter. If you go right across from the Boda building, you know, that slope drops off kind of steeply in that area. This site is approximately 11 acres, just a little bigger than what I reported to you last month. And I think this is the one we're probably going to pursue. Again, this is with just preliminary survey, so some of these site features may turn out to be slightly different in the final design. We're well away from the piece of Little Crystal Lake that's down here off the view. And I just wanted to give the board an update that it looks like we're honing in on site 4. It'll come back to you later for a land lease when we have real design, but wanted to give the board a chance to ask any questions at this point.
What does that do to our future plans for the road? Because I can see it.
Great question. So in the master plan, you have a future roadway diversion, which sort of creates an inner roadway and a new future outer roadway segment. What we would propose to do is just to move this divergence just past the Rockland site, and this road would diverge and join back to the original alignment before it reaches Camp Crystal Lake. We're gonna have to show that as part of this submittal to the FAA to demonstrate to the FAA how we haven't corrupted the master plan, but there's an alternate roadway alignment for your future roadway. The future roadway is not in any funded plan at this point. It's just depicted on the master plan as a future growth project.
So where do we draw the line? Not that this would be a problem, but what if we need to go down further then? Is there a point we reach when we say we can't do any more development?
You mean down this way, Scott?
Correct. If we keep moving back towards the FBO office and down the road there, at what point do we reach? In other words, are we gonna divert that road further down the road?
I don't, because of the way roadway geometry works, when you have 45-mile-an-hour roadway, you have to have long sweeping curves, or you have to create a 90-degree intersection. I don't think you could build another site, say in here, and move this diversion. You would be almost to Camp Crystal Road by then. So I think this accomplishes the goal of the master plan road, but I think you could build sites back this way. You get some wetlands when you get way back up in here, but there is still some room available on this side. But one other thing, Todd mentioned it, but I just want to hone in on it. Previously, we showed you a 50,000 square foot building with an expansion. I think Rockland's decided just to build the whole thing now and not have an expansion, build all the space they need. That was all I had on that. Just wanted to give people a chance to ask a question about that.
Do you need retaining walls or no? Because it looks like you've got some pretty strong
Yeah.
slopes.
Well, this is actually, because of the scale of this, they look close. This is actually a 6-to-1 slope.
Okay.
Which is pretty easy. No slope is above 4-to-1. You have 4-to-1 slopes here on the side slope of your pond. Most of these perimeter slopes are 6-to-1. And we would hope to daylight back to natural grade within that site, what you see here now. The pond's actually drawn twice what we think it'll need to be. We only calculated first for one of the criteria. The other criteria takes more work, so we're doing preliminary work, but to be conservative, we've drawn it twice the size it needs. So, well, in a septic system.
Do you anticipate a bleed down orifice going to Crystal, or it'll be a dry pond?
I think it'll be a dry detention would be our hope. We get pretty high perk rates. The only thing that's gonna make a difference here is 66,000 square feet of water coming off a roof has a really short time of concentration. So we may have to step the pond and maybe try to make the water move so it doesn't inundate a structure, but we're gonna try for a dry detention and not have any kind of bleed down.
And how far is the retention pond from the lake's edge?
It's over 100 feet, Scott. I don't have that number because we didn't survey the lake when we did the preliminary survey, but we'll have to show that and demonstrate to Water Management District that we're further than their setback from mean high water of the lake. But we'll do that once we get into the design phase. Good questions.
And Bill, that setback is 25 feet as far as water management requirements?
Yes, so Water Management District setback is 25 feet, and we're checking. I don't think Bradford County has a more restrictive setback, but we're gonna make sure of that when we move into the design phase. One other thing we're probably gonna find, Todd, I should have told you this ahead of time, but you're not learning it now. There are 100% certainty there's gopher tortoises on this site. They'll have to be identified, trapped, and relocated as part of a Fish and Wildlife permit, just like we did on your taxiway A project.
But you can keep the coyotes. Is it too early in the conversation to ask you the timeline on this, or are you gonna address that later?
I'd like to be moving in a year.
Okay.
The construction time's pretty quick, so other than that, it's a lot of space for the paperwork,
Okay.
largely.
How long do you anticipate the construction timeline, like 2 or 3 months?
I think they called it 16 weeks
Well, that's to build the building.
to build the building.
Yes, the site work will take a couple of months. Thank you, Todd, for letting me
Oh, no,
jump in.
I'm gonna let you interject and,
Yeah, that saves me a bullet later.
next, please. Okay, my closing points, I'd like to make a request and a couple of, observations. We would like to officially request that the board revisit the, Aircraft Design Group 1 versus 2 ramp decision from last month. We realistically need to be able to operate 3 aircraft on a daily basis. Not for this training year, but I'm trying to look ahead. Next training year is gonna be really busy. ADG 1 means we have the following impacts. We looked at the increased tire wear just for tugging and turning in tighter, and you know, it's $12,000 for a set of tires. So it's a significant expense, and we go through, well, in the first quarter of this year, we've gone through 65 tires. So it's a significant expense. Operationally, the interruptions due to small aircraft parking are causing some confusion, and we had a delay even this morning on a flight because we had a Cherokee 140 that decided to park right in front of the 664. We'd also like to request, and I know this is Todd's personal wish list, that you guys look at some additional ramp areas for transient GA aircraft around the FBO, that maybe if they could be accelerated or added to the master plan, that might help alleviate some of the congestion. Next, please. And with that, are there any other questions?
Morgan, can you go back to that previous screen, please? So I've looked at different airport layouts, and it is nice to have taxi through parking. But I don't know why we couldn't take that, of course, it's gonna be the cost of inserting all the tie downs. But why don't we have pushback parking against this far, I don't know, that would be the, what would that be, the south?
West side.
South, or the west side, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. So if we just had aircraft with their tails backed up over there, side by side all the way down, and we could even maybe put in another row ahead of that, all pointing to the east, would that give you enough room?
Yes, I think so. My primary concern is this lead in, lead out line right here, that ADG2 line be respected to the TOFA back to here. That's, anything else, we're never gonna come down on this side. We could make it down this side, but we'll never make it past the FBO. So we're always gonna use that as a lead in line, and then we're gonna lead out, obviously going the other direction.
Okay.
But if we can respect that as that proposed marking in yellow to the TOFAs, I don't think we'll have any problems at all. It's a nice gentle.
We had, when I was at Gainesville, there was a big, a ditch in here. I'll just use this as an example, but it tapered down from the tails and down. And we just backed the airplanes in, you just had to push them back. And if we had another line out here, that could be a taxi and parking. I don't know what the clearances would be. I remember you talking about the different classes of aircraft and the wingspan taxiing thing.
And again, Todd's wish list, or just thinking out loud was, you know, there's all this grass area right here too. And I'm not sure how plausible it is to expand the ramp area over here for GA parking.
And Rockwell will pay for that, right?
Well, we are paying for it essentially. I mean, fuel and, or, you know, there's also, you know, you could probably get a couple more spots up there. Just to kind of offset what you're gonna lose here. Those are the ones, those are not really a concern, but I don't want to damage anything pulling out. And by the time you look at the lead out on that, where we're gonna be aimed, that tail's gonna come pretty close to swinging past this parking space, and that causes me a little bit of concern. Now, we leave the parking at flight idle, but that's still 15%.
At the last board meeting, the board didn't want to pursue those two. They were just looking at these.
Yeah, and my only concern is if we encroach past this TOFA line, it makes our lead in to the parking areas. And this is the advance where we would advance where planes are currently parked now ahead about 20 feet to give some more room for that TOFA. But that's this line right here is my primary concern.
Are we infringing? I think I might be misunderstanding something. Or what?
So, could I back up?
Absolutely.
Hey, Morgan, could you give us the ADG1 drawing, please, that I gave you?
And Bill, can I just interject too, because this was one of the items under my agenda for tonight, that I wanted us to go back and revisit this again, because we have some additional information, a request from from Todd about some other areas of parking that are existing over in front of the old FBO hangar area. So that's why it's under my agenda, because we wanted to talk about this. So we're just going to incorporate it all in this discussion.
So at the prior meeting, you guys had asked me to look at two options for creating more tie-down space in front of the FBO building. And aircraft design group 1 is small aircraft. The taxi lane obstacle-free area is 79 feet wide. So 39 and a half feet on each side of this taxi lane. And we had originally created years ago a situation where in front of the FBO, aircraft could taxi in and loop out with tie-down spaces in the middle. You have some tie-down spaces out there now. The other option, ADG2 please, Morgan. The other option is a larger category of aircraft, ADG2, where the taxi lane obstacle-free area is 110 feet. So you can just imagine when the clearance box for the aircraft to taxi gets larger, you have to move the whole set to the east, and it restricts the number of aircraft you can park in the middle. Where a month ago, where the P3s were parked, probably the tails were across this line. Didn't create a problem because you don't have a lot of larger Group 2 aircraft coming in. Group 2 aircraft can go up to a 79-foot wingspan. You don't get many that big. That's a really big Group 2 aircraft. In the meantime, Todd has repositioned his aircraft, moved them forward anyway to beyond the existing line. The cost that I had given you to create additional parking was about $17,000 for the ADG2s. And I forget the number on the previous slide, ADG1 please, Morgan. 11,000. And I think just based on cost and other considerations at the last meeting, we went with the lower cost option, which gave you about the same number of aircraft. The problem is this really restricts the amount of space for the P3s to taxi in on this line because there's only 30.5 feet here before you get to parked aircraft. And I think if I could paraphrase what Todd is saying it a different way, if the board would reconsider and spend the additional funds to create Group 2 tie downs and a Group 2 taxi lane area, it gives his aircraft more wingspan clearance to taxi in on the marked center line and into their position.
I understand what you just said, but you also said that we don't even get many Group 2 aircraft, so we're designing for something that we hardly ever have, correct?
The Group 2 is definitely a safer design methodology.
Sure, because you have more
And you
distance.
have P3s that operate every week.
Yes.
So whereas you don't get large Group 2s in, you do have the P3 aircraft operating.
Which is technically Group 3.
Well, yes, which, I didn't, thank you. So his aircraft are technically Group 3 aircraft because their wingspans exceed 79 feet, and I don't recall off the top of my head the top of the Group 3 category. But, so it's really hard to operate a Group 3 aircraft in a Group 1 environment. And that's what they've been experiencing. And so the suggestion is, we'll still be creating more tie-down spaces. We had discounted, we weren't doing these in either scenario from last month's discussion. You'll still get more, you'll net more tie-downs in front of the FBO. It just costs a little more because we can't reuse existing anchor holes. We've got to build new anchor holes. So again, I think, actually, on my sheet from last month, I had done a hand calculation. To create the Group 2, it's actually 6 less. It's more like 15,000, not the 17,588. Morgan, could you show us the Group 2 again? We would not be building these 6 in concrete, so this number here goes to 12, not 18. So it's a little less than what's predicted there.
So what I wanted to bring up tonight was reconsidering what we had done last month with respect to the request from Mr. Falconer and the input from Bill. The other thing I wanted to bring is up to date on is, and Mr. Falconer touched on it with fuel cells. Maria has some numbers that she's going to share with us as well. So the additional cost is really, it is a cost, but it's not that much when we take into account what fuel cells we're realizing from the Jet A sales, Jet A fuel cells. So you have those numbers, Maria, just for recent
Yeah, and you'll be able to see in your financials too, where we are.
Yeah.
4,000 or something in Jet A.
Yeah, if you look at your profit and loss in your financials, it was 55,926.
And what we're looking at too, we'll well exceed that number by the end of our fiscal year, just based on the numbers, and those are actually higher numbers than what I pulled from Billy the other day, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I've made notation, but the next class, they're showing with the total of those, it's 85 hours, and they basically are purchasing 3,000 gallons per hour. So that's already throwing us just in the next class alone, not even considering what's taken us through the end of the calendar year. That's over $250,000 in profit.
Wasn't our whole objective, though, the problem you were having administratively is you didn't have enough places for general aviation on the ramp?
Sure.
Okay.
So, yes,
So if we go back, and Bill, I'll address you on this. This is the Group 2 that's posted up here now with 7 GA aircraft on the ramp? And that's discounting the 2 over in the right-hand corner?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, so we've got 7 there. The previous slide had 8 on it, and it was Group 1?
Yes, these are actually, Scott, you gotta look real close. These are actually a Group 1 and a medium-sized Group 2. This is a 172 that's depicted in black, and there's a Cessna 410 that's shown in the background.
Okay,
So you could park
but I guess my question, can we go back to the previous slide for the Group 1?
ADG, thank you, Morgan.
Okay, so we had 8 aircraft on that ramp, okay? If we do a hybrid model, let's say we keep the Group 2 on the tail of Rockland's aircraft, why do we have to stay so far off the FBO front? Why can't we still have 8 aircraft in there?
I think it's your TOFA.
It's this setback right here.
Yep.
Okay, but what I'm,
It comes right to the edge of the pavement, which is just a few feet off the first.
but that's with the Group 1, right?
In both cases, the TOFA line is right on the edge of the pavement.
Okay,
It just has to do with where you can, in this case, Group 1, you can strike this closer, which creates more space here, which is why we could stack 4 there. In
right.
the other case, the line is out here, which means you don't have enough room to stack. You have this grouping shifts up, and you can't
But
stack and still.
I guess that's what I'm stating, is up by the FBO, why can't that be based on a Group 1 taxi lane, and to the east, where the P3s are, it's a Group 2?
You don't do that.
You're not allowed to do that?
It's either a Group 1 taxi lane or it's a Group 2 taxi lane.
Okay,
Because you have here, and I'll tell you, Scott, why we don't do that. You have to be able to post somewhere for your pilot community and transients to know if they come in here at 2 a.m., what is it?
okay,
Can I taxi in there?
It would offer
My
too much
wingtips are
confusion to-
protected or not, and you can't transition here from a
okay,
Group 1 to a Group 2. If you had a T or a place where the taxiway changed names or designations, you could sometimes change groupings. That does happen at Gainesville, for instance.
okay,
Taxiway A is their parallel to their GA runway. It's Group 2 until you get to where you're only going to the T hangars, and then it's Group 1. But you also leave the air traffic control tower at that point, and you're uncontrolled from there to the north. And it's just, I think, local knowledge. If you're going there, you're one of those tenants, and you know not to take a Group 2 or Group 3 airplane up there.
so if we go with the Group 2, and let's say you have your facility built over there, do you think you may be in that building down there in 2 years? Okay. What are your intentions after you get that, whenever it occurs? Are you still gonna have these aircraft up on the ramp?
And our-
Most of them will be shifted down there?
That's an undefined end date right now, and I can't plan for that.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering how long we'd have to live with a
Reposition your
small,
aircraft to the new campus.
Yes.
Once the new campus is built.
Yeah.
Right, and that's my
They'll
point.
design plenty of ramp space for us to have all of our aircraft on.
So if we deal with this now and we only have the capability of having 7 on there, and overflow may have to go out on the taxiway or something, I mean, on the infield, we may only have to live with this for 3 or 4 years or something.
I would think 3 or 4 years is probably reasonable.
And what about parking in front of your warehouse over there, which was another GA hangar, the big one? Were you gonna discuss
So
that?
they're the T blocks that are between the two hangars essentially, they don't bother us at all. It's more of a question of, do you guys wanna accept liability for us pulling out with a Type 3 aircraft and having a GA plane parked there?
Are you talking about right in front of your warehouse doors?
No, not in front of the warehouse doors. That's.
Ones on the
I don't think
side.
you could put in front of the warehouse because the taxi lane for the gas pumps goes right through there.
Oh, it's changed that whole
That's right.
geometry.
But there are 3 slots, I think, right next to the hangar, and those are fine. It's not me that gets worried about those.
And then what do we have if we have transient foot traffic walking across your operation, your ramp, to our ramp too?
Well, it's still the airport ramp,
Yeah,
you know,
Okay.
so, I mean, it's just like any other airport, so
we're
it's,
pretty good about Shepherd.
yeah.
Okay.
You know, if you got 4 big blades spinning, nobody's gonna want it.
There are a few old tie-down markings that are left over that I think are in front of where the P3s are currently parked.
Yes, sir, you're correct.
Those, I think, are troublesome. If a transient comes in, doesn't know any better, doesn't have any other guidance, if they park on one of those or just randomly stop out there, it inhibits their ability to power out. There are 3 along that push back against the old FBO hangar. Those I think are fine because they're pushed back up to the hangar, and you no longer have any over in front.
And that's what I was
of
referring
FBO.
to, is those
That's
2
the
that
building
used to face east and west that were,
Those don't exist
yeah,
anymore, we took
yeah, they're
those out.
gone.
But I think the question would be, maybe a little maintenance, some pressure washing or grinding, if you removed these 3 ghost lines that are in there, so people weren't tempted to park there.
Which is the incident we had this morning.
I think operationally, that would help them be able to power out without having to wait or delay and find Mike and move an airplane.
So what do you think about my idea though of the tails backing up east to west against the curb there by the retention pond?
I think, Scott, I will make a layout that considers that. We did something similar to that. The problem is you don't have enough space then to come in and turn and bypass. So you'll net about the same number of parking spaces here as you have in the center.
Well-
Because you can't create a dead end where somebody gets in here and then has to do a power 180 to get back out.
Okay, yeah, so what I was talking about is backing these aircraft in here. You can probably get at least 5, maybe 6, and then maybe 3 or 4 here. And the other thing is the prop wash coming off of these, with these aircraft perpendicular, I would think would be a lot more rough on these aircraft, but just my opinion.
Props. If I could, Scott,
Mhm.
just using my crude measuring device, the problem with that is this TOFA can't start until you're out past the nose of those aircraft.
And then that throws us into the same problem.
Shifts everything to the
Taxi lane
east.
in, but You
Okay,
don't have enough room to turn and get out and create a
Okay.
U-shaped circulation.
okay, just throwing some ideas out there.
We drew that, and I'll email that separately just to show you how that, there's not quite enough real estate there in the width to do that.
Okay. Will, do we need a new motion to go
Yes.
with this plan? I make a motion that we reconfigure the ramp tie downs into the configuration that's presently shown with 7 aircraft. And that is a class 2,
Group 2 design.
It's ADG2.
group 2.
The approximate cost of these tie downs is about $14,000. The discussion last month was to add that to the apron reconstruction contract as a change order. And we held that because shortly after last board meeting, I learned there was gonna be other considerations. I didn't wanna authorize the contractor and then have to unauthorize it, so I've been standing on it. But does your motion include?
The amendment to the new price of, what is it?
It's approximately $14,000. I didn't take time to recalculate that, but,
Yeah, amending the funds to
and adding it to the
14,000.
other contract.
Correct.
All right, we have a motion, I hear a second.
I'll say.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Prang or Mr. Falconer? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, carried. All right, thank you, Mr. Falconer, excuse me.
Just for the record, that was all Todd's time.
Wait a minute, now you said that one of those items was, no,
Technically, it was
I thought I was helping you whittle it.
I promise you, we'll whittle down. Can you go to my first item, Morgan? Are you ready for me?
yes, yes, sir.
First of what?
I have two items, three items, two with graphics. All right, so back in November, I think was the first time you heard that we were soliciting the FAA for grant funding for a design-only project to design the taxi lanes, reconstruction of the paved taxi lanes in and around hangars A, B, C, and F. Morgan, could you just advance till you see that color graphic, please? So what I have for you now is a supplemental agreement, a task order, if you will, to do that design services, right there. So here's the project area, all these pavements in this horrific color, this taxi lane that has no name, the taxi lanes on both sides of A and B, both sides of hangar C, and in between Echo and Foxtrot. You're currently replacing this pavement now with your own funds from the lawsuit revenues. This is 100% funded by the FAA. It would normally be 90 FAA, 10 FDOT, but this year, again, Congress has authorized 100% funding for FAA eligible projects. This would be design only. So the purpose of this is for the board to agree to supplemental agreement 23. However, we won't start the work until probably October 1st, at which time you'll actually have your grant in hand. There's really no reason to start this early, and if we started early, you would be expending funds before you can actually get reimbursed from the FAA. So this was what Maria, I believe Maria distributed this to all the board members yesterday. And if anybody has any questions on this, the total fee is $195,580. Can you go forward just a few, Morgan? I think we'll get to one more. Oh, whoa, back up one, first spreadsheet. There you go, right there. Yeah, 195,498. It's 153,246 in design services. We need survey. Our survey sub here is Giotto and Associates, $16,050. And we use CSI Geo for our geotechnical studies, $26,202, total 195,498.
When would we anticipate construction of the rehabilitation construction to be funded?
So FAA is funding design this year, and they'll fund construction next year.
Okay.
So next June, July, August, we'll be asking them for construction funds. The total project estimate is about 2.2 million. So the remainder of construction funding, 90% FAA, 10% FDOT, will be a fiscal year 22 project.
This is just a mill and resurfacing of the existing, well, you're anticipating a mill and resurfacing of the existing?
Actually, yeah, I think in some areas we're anticipating reconstruction.
Full depth reconstruction?
The pavement condition index is pretty low on some of these in the failed or very poor category. Morgan, could you go back to the exhibit? We also have to widen all of the taxiway fillets. Right now you have round fillet geometry like this right here. The new FAA geometry has these tapered chord sections. We rebuilt your taxiway A with those tapered chord sections. So this is some of the same. These are only TDG 1s down here. These are TDG 2. So
I'm not saying.
There's pavement widening involved as well. So sometimes when we do that, it makes more sense to reconstruct the whole section.
Sure. I'm not saying this would solve our problem today, but we are looking for additional parking spaces. Would it be wise for us to start considering more asphalt in those areas? I know that the prime real estate is obviously here, but it's been indicated, at least I've understood at least, that more tie-down spaces wanted.
Yeah, but for this particular grant and project, you know, what we're looking for is the consensus of the board to go ahead and move forward with it. It's fully funded by the FAA, so we just need to go ahead and give Bill the approval, move forward with applying for it. And that actually, Mr. Richard, needs to be a separate item that we talk about
They would
As far
not
as the
allow you
ramp.
to expand.
As far as the ramp,
these for-
yeah.
How does it fit into your scope of services?
It's a different type of money for the FAA. An expansion project has different environmental and approval criteria than pavement preservation. So it's just a different type of project. You actually also, you don't have any apron expansion shown in this area on your master plan. So you have apron expansion shown other places, like this apron expansion, but they wouldn't, I don't believe the FAA would even consider expanding into these areas for aircraft tie-down parking, because that would be an expansion project. This has no environmental work associated with it, because there's no impact, it's just a CADX, one-page environmental services. So the first item is just to get a vote to approve the task order. It'll be executed later, but before we can submit the grant application, you have to agree with us on a price, which becomes the basis for the grant application.
I'll make a motion to approve AECom's supplemental agreement number 23 to reconstruct the existing hangar taxi lanes project.
All right,
Second.
we have a second. Any questions? Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Next item, Morgan, please. Okay, the companion to this is the actual grant application for the very same project. There's a couple things that still aren't done here, so what I've shown you on the board is a draft. We're still waiting for Mr. Taylor to sign the title opinion that says you own the airport land. We already know that, we just have to have a signature document every time we apply for funds. And Maria is separately obtaining an independent fee estimate from another aviation consultant. Anytime you execute a contract for design services that's over $100,000, the FAA requires you as the board to hire another consultant independent of us. They calculate their own fee. Those fees have to be within 10% of each other for it to be acceptable, and Maria's working on that separately. If for some reason the independent fee estimate was more than 10% different than our number, Maria would call a meeting between the consultants, discuss the scope, and one or the other would negotiate to be within 10%. Our fee will not go up from the one you just approved. It might go down if the independent fee estimate comes in lower than our fee proposal. I should have said that earlier. You're authorizing a maximum amount. Perhaps that clarification is relevant. Morgan, if you could go forward a handful of pages. It's called Project Cost Breakdown. Keep going. Keep going. Suspense is killing me. You're getting close, but keep going. I should have looked up the page number. Right there. No, keep going. It looked like it. This is it, right here. Okay, so these three numbers right here, that's our design services. This is the surveying, and this is the geotechnical testing. When you submit for an FAA grant application, you're also allowed to apply for up to 2% additional for your own administrative costs. That'll cover the cost of the independent fee estimate, any advertisements that you have to run for the project, and any other administrative costs you might have. So the total grant amount is our fee proposal plus $3,910. You'll be submitting for a grant for $199,408. You have in your non-primary entitlement categories, you have currently 3 years of funding, a total of $450,000 available. We'll be using all of the 2019 funds, 29,467 of the 2020 funds, and you'll have $270,530 left over. The extra 10% share right there comes from another source of FAA money that came through the stimulus where Congress, I think it's the CGRPA, I don't know, there's been so many of them, I've lost the acronyms, but you're using your entitlement funds for 90% of the money, and you're using other federal money for the 10% share. Your obligation on this is no money out of pocket or out of hand to do the design work.
I'll make a motion for AECom to execute the FAA grant application for this
It's
project.
actually the chairman needs to execute it.
Sorry.
We prepared it.
For you to prepare it.
Yes.
For Chair Kirkland to execute it, please.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Mr. Bray?
Thank you very
have
much.
it.
We will get that submitted before the end of the week. The grant will come back to you in probably possibly your August meeting or your September meeting. You will actually receive a grant for 199,408. You'll have to adopt a resolution here before you can accept the grant. That's what actually encumbers the funds. All you've done here is just authorize permission to submit for the money. And again, we won't execute the task order until after you have the grant in hand. Okay, I have one other update with no graphics. The apron reconstruction project is coming along. That's the project that Earthworks is working on. They'll be paving asphalt tomorrow. The concrete valley gutter is already in place. The concrete drainage flume is in place. They started yesterday on one of the change order work items. They're inside hangar F1, Mr. Bailey's hangar, doing floor demolition. Yesterday they taped off all the sides to keep slurry from migrating out. Today they were saw cutting. And one of the things they noted was the slab, you know, the slab is displaced and pushed and cracked vertically. As they were sawing into blocks so that they could jackhammer them and pull them out, the slab was actually popping from the tension that it's under. So there's significant pressure from the expansion of the easy base underneath the slab, so much so that it was, it was binding their saw, and you could hear as they sawed through it, it was popping from the tension. So the situation, I say that only to say that the work you're doing is solving the problem. It was going to get worse because the swelling pressure from beneath the slab was still there. They'll be in the Bailey hangar for probably the better part of 3 weeks, maybe 4. On the apron project, after they pave tomorrow, they'll finish grading around the edges, then sod. We may be able to move back into there by middle of next week and put hangars back into, or put aircraft back into E1 through E5, which I know is important because Maria needs places to put airplanes right now. We're working on repositioning the tenants out of hangar E2, and once they're out, then Earthworks will start the demolition on that slab as well. But I don't think that's gonna happen until we can free up space on the west side of hangar E. One other thing I'd like to ask the board to consider, several years ago, we had a load of leftover asphalt on a job, and we pulled it out in front of the Potapow hangar. And it's basically just about 15 feet wide, right down the center of that old hard stand stem, if you will. The hangar sits on the bulb. We paved the center of the stem. The left and right wings of that stem are very broken down. There's a lot of gravel and FOD. And for about 16 tons of asphalt and about $2,000, we can have Earthworks pave both of those wings and remove that FOD problem and improve that area quite a bit. But that would represent a change order that wasn't in the original design. We don't have to do any more design. We would just direct the contractor to put about an inch or an inch and a half of asphalt in there. They probably wouldn't do that tomorrow. They would do that when they come back to pave the short section of Governor's Road. But I wanted the board to consider that as an operational improvement to tidy up a piece of pavement that's in pretty poor shape.
Do they have the ability to fog seal it? Do they have the equipment to fog seal it as an alternative?
They don't. They would have to hire a sub for that. And I don't think the fog seal would hold the FOD down for very long.
Okay, the aggregate, is that loose?
It's loose, yeah. And it's about 2,000, based on their unit price for asphalt, $132 a ton, I think. That would be about $2,000 expenditure on that project.
And they're just going over the top of what's existing.
Yep, they would just pave over the old pavement that's there. I mean, they'll sweep the gravel off and get a clean surface, but
What's the pleasure of the board?
Is that $2,000, is that the only increase? There's no other change order fee or anything on top of that?
no, it's just extending that unit price with one more truckload essentially, about 16 tons.
And the money's there?
Yes.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, carried. Thank you, Mr.
Any
Prane.
other questions for me? May I be excused? I have to go south again tonight.
Always got excuses, don't you?
I do. I'm happy to stay if you think I'll be there for one of the other items. Or you can call me, I'll just be driving.
I think we'll be good.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prane. All right, moving on to FDOT, Ms. Whitney. All right. Thank you very much for being in our meeting, Ms. Whitney. Looking forward to having you back with us in person eventually. Okay, moving to my items, we addressed the FBO tie downs. I want to address airport board duties. We vote on chairman and vice chairman for positions. There are other positions and titles that are attached to board members. And I'd like to propose a change, and that would be with Mr. Fryer, who right now is the security chairperson. I would like to recommend to the board that Mr. Harvin becomes security chairperson, given his background experience in that area. And he has been, he's expressed a willingness to do that. And then Mr. Fryer would do the aviation, I'm trying to see it here, Mr. Nichols' responsibility with aviation side of.
Yeah, what did we call that? Aviation ops or something?
Aviation chairman.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was, of course, certainly those titles that we assigned, those are somewhat fluid as well. Obviously, our chair and vice chair applies to what's in our bylaws. So if there's something that we need to change up, just as we did when Mr. Cornegay joined the board, or even really when Mr. Richard joined as well. So in terms of what your expertise is, or what you can, bring to the board, that can certainly be defined.
I would agree to it, and we're certainly right now, with the loss of Mr. Nichols and now Mr. Nguyen, we're gonna have to be fluid with this. So I would gladly agree with that and yield to his experience with that.
Okay, and if you both give some thought to that as well, so that we define, or we can give a better description of what that seat holds and is responsible for, just we can work together on that.
Right.
And I can get that in the bylaws.
Okay, is the rest of the board members in agreement with making those changes?
Yes, sir.
It doesn't require a vote.
I
so
agree.
Okay, all right, that's all I have. Mr. Cornegay said he needs 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
I promise, I'm on the clock. So last month, I reported to you regarding the UPWP and the TIP through the Transportation Planning Organization, and how both the roadway access study and the deconstruction, reconstruction airport road, neither were on the, in either program. I also told you that I would talk with Jeff Sheffield at the TPO last month when I went up for the technical advisory committee meeting, and I did. And he is cautiously optimistic that we'll end up getting the funding later on in the 5-year plan, much like we did for the previous access study that we had. So no guarantees, but there's hope. I just wanted to keep everybody up to date on that.
Scott, can you tell me what a TPO is? I briefed Congresswoman Kamek on that.
Yeah.
Because I was asked a question and I kind of made something up. What is it?
Right. So
Transportation Project something is what I threw out
Yeah,
there.
no, the acronym is Transportation Planning Organization.
Okay.
And every every state has to have a certain number of these TPOs or MPOs in order to receive federal funding for infrastructure projects. So
The
now,
transportation part, right? That's
I
all.
did, I got it. He doesn't like that when I toss him out in a briefing either.
right. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornegay. Mr. Richard?
Yeah, I just have two items. So I spent some time on the airport recently in the greater grounds, kind of beyond where we normally visit. I'm always thinking about prescribed fire. I'm always thinking about the issues that we may face. And oftentimes you face them at the last minute when there is a fire racing through. And that can be very problematic. Last big fire experience we had out here was in 2007. That's when the fire jumped State Road 100. That's when Jacksonville had a lot of other issues. So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't at least recommend that we consider some options for prescribed fire management within the property. Blanding has and always does a good job, but that doesn't mean that fire can't come from another direction, devastate what we have, and in some cases cause infrastructure damage. And so what I'm considering is working through, there's the Southern Fire Exchange, there's a couple of different entities that might be able to lead us in the right direction. I don't think this will come for free. I don't think we can get our property burned for free. I recognize that FFS, the Florida Forest Service, they want to help us, but they often don't have the resources to help to the capacity that we need. I'm not suggesting that we go through a major burning effort, but at least get a better idea for what the cost might be and how we could execute that. I did spend 3 years as a wildland firefighter for the Water Management District, but we don't have I don't have the resources to do that. We probably need to use a third party. So before I make any effort to do that, I wanted to see whether or not that was something that you'd like to consider. You're not buying into anything except for me exploring some options.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it definitely needs to be done. We need to pursue that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think as far as the fuel that's on the ground now? Are there areas that have you concerned more than others?
Yes, and if we had not done those several thinning efforts, I would be really concerned, but we have reduced our fuel loads to some capacity. I would say over half the airport is probably like a 6 or 7 on a 10 scale, in my opinion, as far as low fuels. But it just, like I said, all it takes is that one event, and all of a sudden you're like, well, we could have possibly prevented this, and we could have prevented, hundreds of $1,000s worth of timber being burned to the ground, which is a waste of resources. So, and I don't know when all this will come together, but I wanted to get some buy-in before I exerted some time.
Definitely worth researching.
I agree, yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I will start the process, and as soon as I get enough information that's valuable enough to present to you, I'll come back to that.
Excellent.
My other one was, I think we've all talked about this at certain times, and the only reason it's come more to the forefront of my mind is it seems as though there's a need for, there's a want and a will for certain activities to take place out here. And I know you spent a lot of time at the old maintenance barn, and I really want to come up with a better title for it. But that is an amenity that we've spent some time, resources, and treasure on, and in my opinion, we could spend some more and get it to an acceptable facility that could be used for a variety of different things. One thought that came to my mind, and I don't know this to be 100% true, is that Travis Pastrana's, the rally, circus rally. Nitro rally. I'm thinking about, having a group come in or something to that effect. Well, they might want a facility, kind of away from all of that they could, regroup in, et cetera. So I don't have a vision except for, and I don't have a cost, except for if we were to spend X amount of money, number one, pour concrete, number two, put a new roof on it or put metal over what's existing there, and just do some minor upgrades to the interior of it. I think that's all it really needs in order to be far more appealing. I think we've indicated before that there's some aviation groups that had wanted to use that space or might be inclined to use that space. I would say in its current condition, it's somewhat poor condition, but I don't think it'd be a large investment to make it more attractive.
How big is it, square feet?
That's a good question. I would say somewhere around under roof. I think it's about 1,100 under roof.
That's it?
I don't think it's that big.
Okay, 800?
Yeah, maybe.
20 by 20, 400, I'd say more like 650.
Okay.
I went in there and built a little kitchen in there. I added mulch under there, but you're right, it should be concrete. I'd like to see it screened.
Yeah.
And the roof is starting to
Yes, sir.
sag a little bit.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to ask you with your environmental background, so we've talked about Joni Miller with Joni's Dogs or whatever her business name is. She's doing her dog on Thursdays up here and she likes that, but it's in the direct sun.
Yeah.
And that is shaded. It has picnic tables. But my concern in talking to her is because some of her traffic does come in from town, is bringing them down the taxiway with aircraft movement. So as soon as you come through that first S turn, there is a ravine that drops off that's part of the drainage that comes from the old FBO hangar that we're talking about, we're still working on trying to get cleaned out. How feasible do you think it would be? I rode down there before the meeting. I don't know how big culverts come in, but it's probably gonna take about a 36-inch diameter culvert. If we had that was something like, I don't know, 18 feet wide, enough for a single car movement going through, would that be a major thing? I mean, with the amount of fill we've got out here, could we accomplish that internally, putting a culvert in, or do we have to get a permit? Because I think we could bring automobile traffic. There's some trees I need to trim in there.
Right.
But I think we could bring them in and avoid any activity out on the airport movement area.
I don't think it'd be heavy lift from a permitting perspective. You can get an exemption for it in most cases. So
Okay.
I don't think it's unrealistic to look into that, but we also contract employ professional licensed engineers. There's no reason
Right.
why we wouldn't, use those services just to ensure that, we're making all the good choices. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you're just talking about an access road that
bring 'em-
prevents the necessity to go on the taxiway.
Yeah, come through. What is that, Ms. Hitt? What is that that gate? Is that
Tenant gate?
10,
Talking about the tenant gate?
Yeah, the tenant gate.
yeah, I think it's 10 or 10A.
So yeah, when you come through 10,
Right.
you start making the veer to the left.
Right.
And you'd almost go straight ahead in that veer.
Right.
So you'd cross over. There's no way to go around the west side of the building because there is a power pole with a guy wire there. But you could come around to the east side and go into that area that we designated as a camping area with vehicles, traffic.
Sure.
So, and I did talk to Ms. Hitt about having maybe a little work day. There was just a few of us, not necessarily a board work day. But I did some rewiring down there. There's a lot of work already been done. The foundation work is there. But we need to paint. There's a little bit of wood that needs replaced. But like you say, before we get too far, that roof needs to be preserved. I think there's some rotten plywood there. I think the trusses are starting to sag.
Yeah.
However, with one caveat, we also have talked and discussed in previous meetings that is some of our beachfront property, and at some point, there may be a hangar goes up there, so we can't throw too much money at it. But I agree with you, it'd be nice to fix it up, to lease it for a little, not a banquet hall certainly, but a picnic area for the tenants. If somebody responsible from town wanted to come out and use it, it's a good way to, have some combined leisure and showcase our airport.
Sure. So I was considering more in the fact of, going out to a contractor and having a contractor do all this work. I understand that the board could do some of it, but I think it'd be much easier just to go through a contractor and get some bids and get an idea for what we want to, what the cost might be. I'm not saying, everything needs to be finished perfectly on the inside, but from a structural perspective, I think it needs to be repaired, and do our best effort.
Is that something that the guard or the military might be able to use when they bring their jumpers in to get out of the elements, or?
It's not a huge facility and there's no restrooms in it, unfortunately. The guys, but again, if we had a food vendor there, the guard might appreciate the benefit of it there. It'd be a nice place we could put picnic tables out and the guys would be under shade. So,
It's pretty unique,
we've done a lot of work to clear it out. In fact, Mr. Wynn helped a lot, myself and one of our previous employees.
How about, and I don't know who wants to do this, but we need a board member perhaps just to make a list of what we want done, so that when we do go to a contractor, we could say, okay, here's what we're looking at.
Right.
And then move forward with it based on that.
I can spearhead that.
Okay, and I'd be happy to provide some QC or help you to some capacity.
Yeah, we could, now, for clarification again, 2 board members constitutes a meeting.
Sure.
Are we allowed to go out there for the scope of a job, notwithstanding we're not making any decisions? We don't want to violate the sunshine law.
And we'll just figure, yeah, that's, if you develop a list, if you'll share it with Ms. Hitt.
And then she can share it with you.
Yeah, and I-
Will that be a proper way to do that?
Just create suggestions and then send them to me, and then I can pull together a list.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. She can't be a conduit either, so,
well,
technically,
that's true,
so,
that's true.
yeah.
Okay,
All right, so that's just basically, that's one idea that I had. I think it would be hopefully used more once we improved it, and I think it would attract some of the other folks that are coming out here. And then lastly, I just for fun, I've got some videos from the airport that I'd shared with Morgan, if she could share them on the screen. Some of the local activity, the wildlife activities, just push. The neat, all the vapor or the steam coming off the back was really funny to me. This is another friend of the airport.
Where's that at, Chad?
down the gas line, or?
So if you take the Blanding 2-track trail on the edge of the gate, when you get about halfway down, you go into there's an area where all the oak trees are, one of the prettiest spots on the airport where there's a bunch of oak trees.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, there's this weird triangle in between planted pine and the oak trees. And it's a real common place to see. I think there's 2 more, Morgan. There are 2 more. So this is kind of interesting because this tree has been used for years and years and years as a scent tree for bears, and they basically rubbed all the bark off of it. And 20, 30 times a year, this is part of their ritual.
He's not a little bitty thing,
No, the boar's ritual. So the top of this marker, is I think 62, 70, 74 inches. So this is kind of interesting. There's one. Is there one more, Morgan? You can see his nails on that one. You see their claws. They scratch it and they rub it. It's a big boar.
That's a different bear, isn't it?
I believe there are 2 different bears in the video. So
One of them was a lot taller.
yes. So anyways, those are just some of our wildlife that live out in the woods that we probably don't encounter on a daily basis here. But
And if we could just get Camp Blanding to fix their fences or put a big tall fence up there. Come on,
Their
Colonel.
bears inside their fence.
so that's all I have to share. Thank you for indulging.
Well, thank you. That was entertaining. That's interesting to see. All right. Thank you, Mr. Richard. Let's see, Mr. Harvin, we're so glad to have you. And you want to share anything with
Well, I was gonna say, I don't have a whole lot to share, really, to be honest, but one thing did come up, we were talking about sunshine law. I know you and I had talked about it a little bit, sunshine law training. I didn't know if that's something that we as a board want to pursue. I know when I was on city council, we had kind of made it mandatory for ourselves to take, and it's really some good stuff. Keeps us out of trouble.
There will
Because there's a lot of
be
things.
annual training, and with COVID, it really kind of delayed a lot of scheduling
We
of
did it all
in-person
online. We did it
training.
online
Well,
last
that's
year.
good.
There's an online
Yeah.
That's good
platform.
too.
And I haven't seen anything come up from Florida League of Cities.
No, not.
It probably
There
won't be
was
till.
one that happened not too long ago, I believe that Chairman participated in that, but there'll be another one probably within the next couple of months. However, I can share with you a PowerPoint that Mr. Commando shared with our newly elected council members. That
Okay.
was helpful just to
There you go. I mean,
catch you up to
that's
date
all
on
we need.
that.
Refresher, yeah.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
I think most of us had already taken that for this year, but it will be required.
And we have been doing it for what, 4 years now? The airport authority, the
Yeah.
board has, we have.
Yeah, at least 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe longer than
Yeah.
that, that's true.
2016 was the first time I attended when we went as a group.
Oh,
Lake
wow.
City.
Was it 2016?
Yeah, it's been a while.
That's when I started.
Flies.
It does. Mr. Harvin had served on the city council, and at that time, he was the airport liaison back in the day. So
Out here.
I think I started to say, I
We
know,
passed this building, I thought, well, wait a minute.
I know Ms. Hidd met with Mr. Harvin and got him his laptop and gave him a tour, and so I'm sure it looks a lot different now than it did back then.
Yes, sir, it does.
All right,
Done a lot of good work out here. Looking forward to it.
thank you. We're glad to have you on board. All right, Major McDowell.
Good evening. I don't really have too terribly much. The next 30 days on Camp Blanding is going to be business as usual. However, moving into June, it will not be business as usual, and we will have some field artillery firing June 14th through the 18th, which we haven't had that much field artillery firing in quite some time that I can think of, sir.
Since 2001, since 9/11, we switched to coin from conventional warfare.
So
Now we're back to conventional warfare.
they're talking over 1,000 rounds from the 14th through the 18th. That's 155 millimeter cannons. In addition to that, I will have several large demolition shots as well. So if 2 months ago when we were having 40 pounders and people were complaining, on June 21st through June 22nd, there are going to be larger shots than that. So,
Look forward to hearing it.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. It definitely will be the sounds of freedom, but I would absolutely like to try and get ahead of, like I said, the public affairs on both sides, from the military side and the city of Keystone side. That's all I have.
So have you messaged that to the community? Have you started that engagement process? I know you had mentioned that you are always trying to encourage more participation in the community.
I have I put it out through my public affairs? Not yet. Come June 1st, I will.
Okay, understood.
Yep, so, but, like I said, busy month of June coming up. That's all I have.
Thank you for the updates, and we appreciate those dates as well, because I know occasionally airport staff gets a call and wants to know why we're shooting artillery and exploding things out here, because it comes from the area, so.
A little steam, it gets a little.
Just tell them, that's just Maria, she's having.
We'll see how good Bill Prang managed your contractors putting these windows in.
Yeah.
We're out on one bus, and he didn't do a good job.
Chairman,
Yeah.
Chairman, if I may, is that something that we would share the same message as the Guard through the airport as well as the city of Keystone?
We have done
The
that.
many avenues sharing it, the better. We have.
Yeah, we've done that in the past. In fact, yeah,
I've been
Mr.
doing
Fryer.
it with my home sites group right here on Crystal Lake and
Yeah.
putting it on Facebook. And I've gotten positive feedback from it. People appreciate that. That way they don't have a heart attack. But the funny thing is, I think most of us that have lived in this area for a number of years, when we hear it, we know what it is.
Yeah.
It's the people moving in that are not quite clear on what that noise is.
Would it be day activities or night ops?
Day.
The true test is not our windows, but how many of the RV parks, RVs will literally just.
Well, that was an issue when they built that down there.
What's
There was
that?
a huge issue for encroachment. Yeah, that came through Camp Landing a few years back before they built it.
That's within your 3 mile.
Yep. Yep.
Can you do anything about the mosquitoes, though?
My goodness gracious.
I don't know.
Or no? It's bad.
That and the yellow flies.
You're an environmentalist and you're an entomologist. Though, no? No, okay. Can't do anything, sorry.
Right. All right. Thank you, Major McDowell. Ms. Hitt.
The first thing on my list is to schedule a budget as well as the minimum operating standard draft review workshop. As you know, that was something that between myself, Chair Kirkland, and then Mr. Fryer had proposed some changes to our minimum operating standards, and that's kind of coming to a close. But I think we wanted an opportunity to where we could just review it and make sure before we send it out for final. The other piece on the budget, which probably would take more time than the minimum operating standard piece, but if we can schedule maybe about an hour, I would like to go over some proposed amendments that I would like to make to a current budget that we're in. Based on our revenue from our Jet A sales, it allows us to maybe make some changes in our current budget. So I'd like to be able to sit down with the board and go over that.
Because you're projecting our sales are increasing.
Yes, yeah. So if you all could either we can decide on a date this evening, or if you would like for me to email out. I would like to be able to do it maybe within the next 2 weeks, because whatever I can finalize, we can set for a motion for our June board meeting.
What's the week of the 17th look like on your calendar, guys?
I'm good.
Any particular day better for?
Now, are you talking about doing it at six PM?
We can do it whatever
Earlier,
time constraints.
Earlier, yeah.
I know, Chad, sometimes
Possible.
your schedule is.
Sure, I can do my best.
But if you want to do something earlier,
You want to shoot
for me when it comes to scheduling stuff.
Tuesdays or Thursdays?
I guess Bruce works too, so.
Tuesdays or Thursdays?
Yeah, Thursday looks good for me.
The 20th?
Yeah.
Everybody good with the 20th? All right, put that down. That's it, May 20th.
And what would be the earliest?
What's the earliest, time frame?
Marvin and Mr. Bashar?
You don't need planning in there for that, do you?
No. Unless you want to come.
4 or 5 be the earliest for me, typically.
I can be flexible. I'll do my best to be
But I
flexible.
mean, I can be anytime.
What were the times? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
4 o'clock would be the earliest?
Yeah.
4:30?
But if we need to go earlier, I'll make it happen.
Okay, so earliest?
4 PM? All right, let's do 4 PM. And prior to that, we'll send some information out. We'll have Ms. Hitt send information out that we'll be covering in that workshop, so you'll have a heads up. All right?
My second item, I'm gonna ask that we table this on the Jet A truck lease, because that actually will be part of the budget amendment. My suggestion, of course, I brought this to the board a couple of months ago, we looked at some leasing options, and I think that sooner than later, we need to probably figure out, our funding is fine, but figure out on getting a lease truck in here for Jet A. We with the classes building with MHD Rockland and their turnaround and their need for fuel, on top of that, there's issues with, as we all know, with deliveries of goods. Jet A and fuel is one of those. They're pushing us out further on getting deliveries in here. And when we need fuel with them, having an additional truck really helps us, because we can have 2,200 gallons in our current truck. We can have 5,000 sitting in a new truck, and then we can still accept another load in. So it really kind of protects us, and then we don't have to, turn MHD Rockland away.
What was that, what was it, about 1,500 a month on the lease rate?
That is, yes, and that's a 2009 truck. I've gone back to Byron, who's with Titan, to see if we can get possibly, pricing on a newer truck. I think we'd want to stay with a 5,000 gallon truck. And then also just looking at the lease verbiage, because it talks about the maintenance that we're responsible for. And so we want to make sure that Jim takes a look at that lease as well. So that'll give us a little bit more time between now and when we meet on the 20th. So.
We need to just probably send an email to Jim to tell him that we have that workshop scheduled, so, we need to, if he has any input, then we need to have that for that meeting.
Okay, will do. I sent out an email to all of you last week regarding Lonnie and her retirement. She has put her retirement date in for June 30th. We do have her job posted. I'll be accepting applications until the 20th, and then hopefully setting up interviews for that following week. week after. So that way it'll give that new person at least a month with Lonnie for training, which should be adequate enough. But that has been posted.
What is that position? Are we calling it administrative assistant right now?
Fiscal clerk.
Okay, fiscal clerk. And where do you have it? Do you have it like on Indeed or any of the job websites?
Right now, it's gonna be posted in the newspaper, hopefully this week. And then we also have it on our website as well. And I'm sure we'll put a link on Facebook.
Maria, that's something that we could probably share on the city's website as well.
Okay, yep,
If it was something over to Mary.
okay, will do. And we've already had a couple of people interested in it, I think just word of mouth around town as well. So, and I'm gonna keep it as a 30-hour a week position. Lonnie says that, you know, she can get all of her work done within usually 2 or 3 days, but just having that additional staff here for when I'm in meetings or, you know, or somebody's out, that way we still have somebody's answering phones and doing customer service, so. And as far as facility updates, nothing major to report. Mike sends out really a detailed report that I can send out to any of the board members, but in terms of anything that's significant, of course, we've got our tenant gate is working again. Those bump sensors were replaced. Tom Nichols, we contacted him regarding our AWAS because the rain gauge it got struck by lightning some time ago, and the replacement part on that at that time was about $4,000 to $5,000. And I think that was something that the board said, let's just hold off on that. I just got an email from him today that FAA has approved a new type of sensor that's out there, which is about $1,000. So as soon as he comes out to do our annual certification of the AWAS, he will probably go ahead and just bring that piece and get that replaced, so that'll be up and operational.
Would you add one other thing to that is I notice, we used to have density altitude on that thing, and I don't think it's reporting it now.
I think that, and did they fix the call-in from the phone as far as the recorded message? Because it was all broken up.
That would have been a phone issue, I think. How long ago was that? I thought that got fixed. I hadn't heard it.
I hadn't checked it recently, but I know the last time.
Okay.
Had a pilot mention it to me, and then while we were talking, I dialed it up, and it was just, every other word was missing, so.
Well, that's one thing I was running into before Crystal did it, is my voice was too low on the part we put in.
Well,
and it had something to do with the modulation of that microphone.
It's
I've
not
heard what you're
that
talking
portion.
about.
It's actually that digital
The
voice.
automated.
Yeah, that
is doing it
automated.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll check it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll call it
Issue
after the meeting.
before, and I think it had something to do with the phone system, the voice over IP, calling into that, and I think we got it reset, but I'll double check it tomorrow.
And you've got the density altitude
Yes.
added to it, okay.
Yep, I will check that as well. Mike has started bush hogging. I think the infields look good. I think he's gonna start on the far side, probably tomorrow, depending on weather. Other than that, I did meet on, let's see, it was 2 weeks ago tomorrow. We had our first initial meeting with Bradford County and Clay County Emergency Management Sheriff's Department. Lynn was in attendance as well, to discuss really the traffic and parking logistics for the Nitro event. John Ward he had not been contacted by the event planners. And so we ended up having 2 meetings. I met with them at the Bradford County Sheriff's Department last Friday as well. Apparently the event coordinators have already started marketing this thing, and they're anticipating 20 to 25,000 people. And so there's a lot of concerns in terms, as I mentioned last month, in terms of emergency evacuation, and just unloading and bringing those people, that amount of people in off of 100 into this airport. So we're gonna continue to meet on a monthly basis, just about traffic, parking, the management of all of that. And then I'll just keep everyone updated. Mr. Joel Lamp?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Lamp was going to be here this evening and he had a conflict. And so he's gonna come to us in June, which probably is better because he may come to us with a different plan than if he would have this evening, because he'll be involved in ongoing meetings with emergency management, so.
Mr. Lamp,
Joel Lamp.
who is that?
Oh, that is the, so it's Airstream
Ventures.
Adventures is the event team. They have been contracted by, or with the Clay County Board of Tourism.
Okay.
So they're the ones who brought the event to
They're
Clay
the-
County Tourism, and then
Others.
they,
Okay.
yeah, they brought the event to the firm.
Okay.
So it really wasn't a firm event until Clay County Tourism approached them.
Welcome aboard, Bruce.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, so,
12,000
it's-
cars.
Yeah, we need to get to work on secondary entrance, don't we?
yes,
100,
yep,
not before that event though.
yeah.
Well, and I was gonna suggest too, you know, I attended the first meeting. He may want to be involved, but in the event you can't make it, I could fill in for you, you know, either way.
Okay.
But I think he'd be the primary person.
I'll send out the upcoming meetings and the agendas to you as well.
Maria,
Yes.
May 19th is not here, is that a beach pavilion?
Yes, we had a conflict with somebody who had rented this facility out, and so now we're having it at the beach pavilion. Because of the amount of people, we just don't have the
Right in your
room.
office.
Yes, across the street at the beach.
Okay.
Other than that, I think that's all I've got.
I know you probably don't want to revisit this, but I did talk about the drainage down there. Didn't we award the bid and then the company came back and said they couldn't do it after all?
They just stopped contacting us.
Okay.
They never said they couldn't do it.
Okay,
And then, so, we discussed, I think we discussed some of that as well, is if the bids were coming in under 10,000, then we don't have to go out to bid, but we can just get 3 quotes.
go back to the second party or originally bidders have been
They
too
were
high?
higher.
Yeah, they were higher, and then the third party, which was much lower, it wasn't apples and apples. They wanted to use our employees, they couldn't clean out the ditch. But while
Our equipment.
while Earthworks is here, Herb is working on a proposal for it as well. We thought, well, he's here and he's got his equipment here as well, that might alleviate some of, or reduce some of the costs just from that standpoint. So we're waiting from him.
Okay,
So I'll get back to you on that.
thank you.
And we'll go back to Lonnie's, you did have a retirement party planned?
Yes,
Okay.
for June 26th.
Okay.
So if you all want to put that down, her husband has asked that I plan it. And he'll pay for it all. So I'll be sending out like an electronic invite, I think, as well.
Okay.
And we still have time, we can make this a roast.
Like pig roast?
Sure, yeah. And actually, speaking of that, Mike Brackenberry with his huge pull-behind roaster that he made, he'll be the one cooking it as well.
Good.
So I think it should be good,
For 15 people.
right?
Man,
And that's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Hitt. Mr. Ratowski.
I just have a couple of items. One, we're continuing working with Chairman Kirkland and Ms. Hitt for the ordinances for addressing the Keystone Heights Airport to mimic what's in our charter and things like the town laws that have recently been adopted by the board. And we should be just about complete with those and moving forward from a council's perspective, probably June or July. That's where you'll see the required ethics training on an annual basis. Outside of that, the city of Keystone Heights sends its great sympathy to the airport board and the loss of Mr. Nguyen this past week. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
And the city will be addressing replacement of that seat next month. We're not going to do anything this month, and so they'll handle that process from there. All right. We've completed everything on the agenda. Any other items? Colonel Zinko? All right. All right. We will consider ourselves adjourned at 7:30. Thank you very much.